Dude, do you think Argentina's okay? We watched this movie and it was huge in Argentina, and that has me concerned about the mental health of the entire country. I think we should probably call the police and have them do a welfare check.
How do you do a welfare check on an entire country?
You just knock on the door. Yeah, the Argentinian door.
I don't know why I pictured like one freaking door for like this entire country.
That's what you're supposed to picture. That's why. That's the picture I painted.
One guy there. Hey everyone, welcome to Straight Jacket Talk. My name is Kevin. I'm joined by my co-host, who hates goats, Nathan. Nathan, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. Just thinking about how much I hate goats.
You know, I was going to ask, do you really hate goats?
Yeah. This is news to me just now, but I do hate goats. You just told me I do.
I'll tell you what, after seeing this movie, I might hate goats too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't shoot them though.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And we learned that in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
We watched When Evil Lurks. Finally. Now, this movie had kind of been talked about in the horror community for a little while. It was released in 2023. It was written and directed by Damien Runga. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly.
I hope I pronounce any names correctly tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. We're going to do like person 1 and person 2.
Right.
You know? Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, this has a 97% critic score and an 80% audience score. So this is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's considered a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
But what did we think of this movie? Now, before we get into our review, we want to ask if you could please like and subscribe to our channel. That would be great. And also hit that notification bell, because when we do more videos and have more shows, you are the first to know. Isn't that right, Nathan?
No, that's right. It's a privilege.
Yes, definitely a privilege. Well, let's get into the review. Now, to start, I want to go over our overall impressions or thoughts on the actual movie. So I'm going to start things off. And, you know, I had heard about this movie for quite some time, like I said before. It was talked about, you know, between horror fans. It's on Shudder right now, streaming. And
Shudder exclusive, I believe, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't believe you can find it anywhere else, but I could be wrong.
I think you can buy it, maybe, but...
Oh, okay, yeah. If they still have physical media available, huh?
Oh, that's a story for another day, right?
For another show. Not this one.
Right.
But yeah, so, you know, I was going into it kind of excited because I had really no spoilers on this movie. I don't know about you, but like...
I had a few. I made the mistake
of
reading too much Reddit, and nothing crazy, though. I didn't know where it was going overall.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's good, because I always hate kind of when you go into a movie and you've read like half the movie from other people,
right?
Know, and you're like, oh.
And you shouldn't watch trailers anymore, because trailers do nothing but spoil the movie these days.
You're 100% right. 100% right. I couldn't agree with you more. The problem is, like, on certain trailers for certain movies, like, I want to see them so bad.
Right.
And it's so hard to keep away from them, you know?
But you always, 100% of the time, you go, I didn't want to see that. I wanted to see that when watching the movie on something. Just one thing, maybe, but, you know.
Right. Yeah. You know, you're right. So I'm glad on this one, I really went in with fresh mind, fresh point of view, no bias towards anything. You know, I had heard there were some crazy scenes in it, but nothing specific.
Right.
And that reminds me, before we go any further, I want to let people know that this is a review filled with spoilers. So
Yeah.
it's
It's only been out a few months.
Movie,
you gotta give the spoiler alert.
right? Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna get into some spoilers. I'm gonna be honest with you straight up front. And I know on the Mouths of Madness podcast, I've said before, I'm not a fan of possession horror movies.
Yeah.
So, this movie overall maybe wasn't my cup of tea.
Right. Okay.
But, and I will say though, I was along for the ride. And
it takes you on a ride.
Yes.
For sure.
It does. What I really liked about this movie is I think it does possession movies differently than other ones I've seen.
Yeah. I would agree. It almost with that,
treats
100%.
possession like zombie movies almost.
Yeah. Or like a rage virus type of thing almost.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the infected.
Yeah. Don't they say at one point, or not at one point, like several points, they talk about like the rotten.
Yeah.
And at first, I don't know about you, but when they open the movie and there's that like, oh, he's got the rotten or something like that. I'm like, well, what the fuck are they talking about?
Oh my gosh. And, And then you see the rotten and it's like, oh God, I'm going to be sick.
Yeah. So, yeah. Who was that guy? Was like a neighbor, right? He was the neighbor's kid.
Yeah. So the brothers' land, Pedro and Jimmy's land. His name's not Jimmy. I don't know why they kept putting that in the subtitles, but their neighbor is a guy named Ruiz, and he's like the landlord of these people who have the rotten in their house. They're on his land. So
right. Okay. Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. Because, and it seemed like they were kind of, far away. And I think what I also like in this movie is, it does feel very remote. Mm-hmm. I know they go into town at one point.
Yeah. But otherwise it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere.
Right. 100%. And that's scary to me. Like,
no help's coming.
Right, exactly. No help. And you're out here with this big rotten guy that, woo. Yeah. Like, this is already fucked up.
He was like the bloater from Last of Us. But I know you don't play video games, but
no.
Like, I don't think I've seen. It was really great creature design on him. But go on with what you were saying.
No, yeah, I just think like the whole setup of it was done really well. They're creating a terrifying atmosphere, and like I said, creating this possession as sort of zombie-like, or like you said, like virus-like taking over, and it's done in a way. Again, a possession movie's done in a way that to me was interesting because again, I'm not a fan of this type of horror movie.
Right.
Usually they're kind of slow, built up, and that's kind of their format. And that's fine. It's just not for me.
Right.
But this was formatted definitely different, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
I love the cinematography of how everything was shot. It looks gorgeous,
amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I thought it was really good. Now, some of the things I didn't like, going through and my thoughts of it, I thought some of the scenes were a little too drawn out.
Okay.
And specifically, I'm going to talk about the big jump scare sort of deal with the dog.
Oh, okay.
And the little girl.
I mean, I disagree, but go ahead.
That's good. I'm glad you disagree.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, I thought when there's the scene of the dog becomes possessed, right? That's what we're led to believe, right?
Oh, yeah. He sniffs the clothes and then he's possessed because the clothes came from where the rotten is.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Right. So he becomes possessed and he attacks this little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought like it was building up and I'm like, oh crap, they're really gonna go here. Like,
yeah,
the dog's gonna attack, and they did.
Yeah.
Now, there's been like a lot of arguments on social media about horror and killing kids and things like that.
Right.
And for me, in my opinion, like, John Carpenter's been like on this from day one about, you do it to set up that nobody's safe.
Nobody's safe. Yeah. Your favorite character's not safe. The main character's not safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree. Like, I think, okay, if you want to do that, then that's fine. Okay.
Right.
But it also has to make sense too.
Right.
And I agree, like, it made sense in this moment in this movie to do it like they did, because
she's not the only kid who gets it in this movie.
Right.
And
right.
It's kind of one of the themes of the movie is kids suffering because of the mistakes of adults.
Right.
But go on. I'm sorry.
No. That's completely true. And I think they used it at this point in the movie because Pedro had come to his ex-wife's house.
Right.
With her husband, and Pedro's kids are there. Mm-hmm. And he knows that shit's fucked up. Like,
they
gotta get out of there, Mm-hmm. And he's trying to convince them, and admittedly, he seems crazy, dude. He strips naked in their house.
Dude, I would not believe Pedro in that same situation either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So to me, like, you needed that scene of the dog attacking the girl, and the way they did it at first was great. Right. I liked it. It was okay. And then I thought it dragged on a little too long, and it became
it dragged on a little too long after the dog's first bite.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
I thought you were talking about before, and I was like, that built up so hard for me, and I was like, and it just worked so much for me.
I agree. I liked it. And like, I wish they would have done is done that scene, that jump, bam, the dog grabs the girl, pulls her off the screen, and then you can either get to the point where the dog is,
running out
leaving.
The door.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I felt like the scenes under the table were kind of like poking the bear a little bit, like with the audience, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that also, for me, that made it scarier.
Okay.
I thought it worked for me. It is very much in line with what this movie is trying to do. And although, frankly, this movie, that scene is talked about a lot in particular. I just want to give credit to Jaws again. The Kintner boys scene is more brutal than this one.
Yeah. You think so?
Oh, I 100% think so.
Because of
there's no geyser of blood in this scene. There's actually very little blood in this scene in general. There's like a small pool but that's not to say that Jaws is more brutal than this movie, because it very much is not. The brain snack scene is in this movie.
And I was going to kind of tie this to that scene a little bit too.
Right.
Of, again, later on in the movie, there's a scene where the possessed mother comes for the boy who's not possessed at that point.
Right.
And she takes him, and the uncle goes to get him back, and he comes up on the mother with the kid, and she's basically eating his brains as he's pulling up.
That doesn't really do it justice. She's got his head wide open, and she's reaching in there like she's going for popcorn at a movie theater.
Oh my God.
She's like really digging in there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I personally could have done without it being quite that rough.
You're right.
But that's not what this movie does.
Yeah.
You know, I guarantee you that the director was going, look what they're going to see. You know what I'm saying?
You know what?
So
I wonder if I'm just getting old.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think now's as good a time as any for me to talk about my relationship with gore. And gore and like bleak endings and stuff. I used to have an iron stomach for this kind of thing. And these days, I really don't. I have a much harder time with this type of stuff than I used to. And there are movies that I refuse to watch as a result. I'm sure the audience can figure out a few of them without me talking about it. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think, like, what I would say on that, right, is maybe it is we're, you know, getting into a different age group of, you know, where these movies are not targeting, you know, the audience. What I will say to your point, though, on like the other movies, and I just want to touch on one of those movies or the franchise, the Terrifier franchise.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I will not be watching.
Yeah.
No Martyrs either. No Stalo, 100 Years of Sodom or 100 Years of Sodom. But go on.
No, I do want to say with those movies specifically, the Terrifier movies, I tried to keep an open mind because, and I wonder if this is the way that things are going with horror now, where we've gotten to the point where there needs to be something people are talking about in your horror movie, because as a society, we've become very desensitized towards violence and, you know, disturbing images and things like that. Like, I wonder if now the format is, let's get something, you know, either a scene or multiple scenes or, you know, just this big conclusion of horror that gets people to talk about that movie, you know, in the way that, like, you know, back in the day, people would talk about The Exorcist, you know, or something like that.
Right. And
know?
Actually, when you think about it, the marketing for Terrifier was very similar to the marketing for The Exorcist, you know, showing people coming out of the theater upset, talking about people passing out and vomiting in the theaters and stuff like that. Although for Terrifier, it makes a lot more sense in a modern context, but I mean, even on that second Terrifier, you know, there were rumors that the director and the creator had specifically ran with those, like, you know, people were throwing up out of the theater, you know, as promotional stuff. But it's like, at the same time, how could you not use that because it gets people talking about your movie, you know what I mean? Right. I mean, I do question a little bit how true it is as well. But I mean, I know that the Terrifier franchise has quite a reputation, and for good reason. But, you know, if people are that upset, I feel like they just walk out of the movie rather than wait until they puke because they're so upset. But no, I would use that. I mean, it's classic marketing. It's you know, going back to The Exorcist. I mean, even something as tame as like The Conjuring or whatever is using in their marketing, people going in the theater and stuff like that. It's like, this is how we get people to talk about this movie. What is that? You know, why are people doing that? I got to know. But
no, I mean, I think that's the bigger conversation, you know, and in a movie like this too, because I think there was some scenes like, you know, the little kid getting his brain eaten.
I hope that horror isn't going that way overall. And I want to say that I want to say up front that I loved this movie. I adored this fucking movie. I thought it was amazing. It's up there with Hereditary for me, despite the things that I normally don't like being in this movie. And to some extent, I also think that this movie justifies itself in using some of that imagery. Like I said, the brain snacks was, I don't think you would have had less impact overall for the movie if you had taken that out. I don't, you know
what? I mean, I agree with you to an extent, but I think what I was trying to get at, even with the dog scene, is I think they,
it's a scene people talk about
too long. It became just a little too long and drawn out for my taste.
Right.
Because what I love in horror, like, okay, show us that image or that, scene, but make it to the point where we're not focusing on it too long, where our imagination could kind of take it to that next level.
Right.
Of like, oh my God, like I can't even fathom this.
Right. Like there is 2 shots of the brain snack scene. The first one where he just drives past her and it's pretty quick to the point where you go, did I just see what I think I saw?
Yeah.
And then they go to the second shot and they just linger there for, it's probably only 5 or 6 seconds, but it feels like a minute. But maybe they could have done it and just had that first flash and it still would have had the same impact. People still would have talked about it because it is what it is.
Right. I'm just kind of, for my taste on that, that's what I'm saying, and I agree with what you're saying too. Like, it's kind of like those, oh shit moments.
Right.
And, and I think there is kind of a good story building in this movie too.
Right.
So it's not just, I want to make clear, it's not just like these scenes of gore all over the place. And, it's a shit show,
Like I said, I do feel like it justifies itself to a point. Like, no, this is, a demon is not going to spare your sensibilities. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for the most part, it worked for me. And honestly, some of the stuff that I kind of could have done without, maybe I'm just being a wussy. I don't know, but
no, I don't think so. What were some of your like favorite scenes in the movie? Do you have like a favorite scene or like a favorite kill or anything like that?
A favorite kill?
Yeah. Or like technically not a kill because I guess they come back as.
Oh no, they're dead.
Right?
They're dead. Every kill is serious. There's nothing in here like My Bloody Valentine where you go, that's crazy.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
No.
But when that little girl says to her mother, Daddy's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Daddy's going to kill you.
Yeah, that's a great one.
He's going to come home in his car and boom.
Papi va a matarte.
Que mi amor, no te entiendo qué decís.
Que papi va a venir a casa en el auto y boom.
I was like, oh God, that's about to happen, isn't it? That girl ain't lying. And then it happens. And the little girl is just a regular little girl. She's not playing like a creepy kid. She's just jumping up and down, all happy. And it was like, it's probably the easiest scene to film because you just tell a little girl to, hey, just jump around and be happy, right?
Right.
But because it's so normal and she's acting like a normal little girl, it freaked me out, man.
Yeah, I got you. You know what I love too is like, so she says that, right? And it's literally like, I don't know, 30 seconds later it happens.
If that, yeah. If that, for sure. And
at first I was thinking we're not going to see this on screen. Like it's going to be one of those, like we'll come back to and be like, holy shit, she was right.
This movie doesn't do that.
No, right.
This movie wants you to see everything.
Yeah.
And
you know what? My favorite scene and my favorite kill are one and the same. It's with Ruiz and his, I don't know if it's his wife, I'm guessing.
That's his wife, I believe, anyway.
And
Ruiz is
like,
a menace, by the way, but go on.
He's kind of a douchebag,
Dude,
if you ask me.
Complete and total menace douchebag. Got what was coming to him.
I love when she's like, "Oh, it's the goat," and she's like, "It's that goat," and then
you're just looking at regular ass goats,
right? I'm like, well, how
what's
the
going
fuck
on
do you
here?
know which goat it is? Like, they all look the same, and then all of a sudden he fires the gun, and that one goat's there looking at him.
And then he points the gun at the goat, and the goat just puts his head on the barrel, and you're like,
fucking kill me, you know?
Right?
Like there, and then so I like. My favorite kill is when he shoots the goat when his wife is crying at him not to.
No lo hagas, espera. Por favor, no le dispares con un arma de fuego a la bestia. No vas a condenar, mi amor.
And she picks up an axe, and then all of a sudden just whack right into Ruiz. And then
don't feel bad for him. Yeah.
And then whack, whack, whack. I was like, holy shit. I was not expecting that.
That was like the first holy shit moment of the movie.
Yeah,
for me.
It was, I think.
Like that.
Well, besides seeing the dude in bed, the rotten guy.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. It's the second holy shit moment for me. Because like they go out into the woods and they find that half a man, and it's like, oof. That's rough, but it's nothing I haven't seen before in many movies. But that was the first kill, I think, that made me go, was it the first kill in general, actually, now that I think about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the one we saw, like you said, we saw the half of the guy, but we didn't see that.
No, yeah. Yeah, that was something. I didn't feel bad for Ruiz, let me tell you. None of these characters know how to listen. You notice that? Like, hey, an expert needs to deal with this. No, I need him out of my town.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And like, Ruiz just comes up with this idea that the government planted it based on nothing. He just makes that up in his head and decides it's true.
Dude, he was all about that. He was like, you know, that's kind of what starts this, is his paranoia of having to move this rotten.
Well, he shouldn't have moved the rotten at all.
Yeah.
That's the reason all this stuff goes down. That's the reason the goat is even possessed, because they moved the rotten for some reason, because they were scared.
You know what? So I think, you know, besides those like extra scenes of gore or whatever, my only other real issue with this movie is at times it gets confusing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand if they're possessed. My biggest confusing moment was with one of Pedro's sons who has autism.
Right.
And they talk about it was the woman there, Mirtha talks about how because he's autistic, when the demon goes into him, like, it doesn't know what to do because of the way his brain is wired, right?
She does clarify that is not a permanent state for the demon, and given enough time, he will be able to take care of it. The demon will be able to. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she does. I do have to say that I think this movie does suffer a little bit from what I have a feeling that there's a bad translation going on here a lot.
Oh, okay.
Because the thing that confused me was like Mirtha explaining why all this can happen when the rotten isn't dead, because I was under the impression that they accidentally killed the rotten and that's why all the possession is happening all of a sudden.
Yep. Right. But
But
the Rotten's still alive.
yeah, and Mirta explains that, oh, it's like he's in the birthing process now, and the explanation didn't make much sense to me. I just sort of let it go because it's taking me on a ride.
Right.
But I don't know. There were some instances where, like, it felt like I was reading a Google Translate. Like,
yeah.
Like there's one point where the mother of the Rotten was like, "Don't do it. It will be for worse." And I'm like, "It will be for worse." Did you use AI to translate this? That's not an English sentence. So
Yeah.
I don't want to give it too much of an excuse on that. But I do feel like some of the things I was confused about might have just been bad translation.
I got you. I think, in my question specifically with the autistic child was then all of a sudden he becomes like clear mind, right? Walks in.
No, he's not clear mind though.
Oh, well, not clear mind.
He's possessed. That is the demon speaking.
Okay.
Yes.
He's possessed, right? So he's no longer autistic and acting, like an autistic child.
Right. Which is
acting
terrifying, by the way.
totally normal.
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of figured like that was going to happen. I was like, man, this could be one of those situations. So in the end, they talk about with the little boy who was the neighbor, he says something like, the same thing that happened to your mother happened to my mother. And then the kid who's autistic, he starts choking. He pulls like hair out of his mouth. So
Right.
did he eat his grandmother?
Did Jair, the autistic boy, eat his grandmother?
Yeah.
Yes. The big clue for that is they pull out he pulls out the necklace that the grandmother was wearing for most of the movie.
Oh,
And they
okay.
show the
Gotcha.
necklace. It's like one of those, I don't know, you buy it at like, one of those little girl shops at
Right.
the mall or whatever, and it's like got little figurines of the family or whatever on it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was the case. Here's my question though too, on that little boy or the neighbor boy there.
He ate his mom.
He was not possessed?
The way he explains it is that he heard voices that told him to do certain things.
Okay.
The big one was he's the one who killed the cleaner at the beginning of the movie.
Oh.
He's the one who that's what he says.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He killed the cleaner
Alright.
that was coming to kill the rotted.
Oh, okay.
And then he ate part of him and then gave part to the pigs, apparently.
Okay. But he seemed okay, or that was the demon talking.
Well, I mean, the autistic kid at the end of the movie also starts
okay.
acting like he's okay.
Autistic, right.
But then there's
Yeah.
like a shot of him where he's had the entire time he's been his normal self. He's got the 1,000-yard stare. And at the end of the movie, he just sort of looks up at his dad, which is not something he would have done.
Right.
So I don't know if the demon just doesn't keep a hold of you 100% of the time.
It just goes between.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And honestly, I'm happy to not completely understand this.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
mean-
like it's a question that you can explore and think about that doesn't need to be
you're right.
spoon-fed to you. But yeah, I don't think the demon keeps a hold of you 100% of the time until you've died. And then you're just one of these.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because nobody who was possessed and still alive seemed to stay demonic 100% of the time they were on camera. Right?
So, Pedro and Jimmy, did they make it through? Like, not being possessed?
That's a good question. I mean, Pedro does some dumb shit.
Listen,
So-
before we go any further,
Is it really dumb, or is it malicious incompetence by a demon
Okay.
who's trying to trick you?
this is what I want to know, right? I thought this was like the most idiotic thing to me because like you said, there is that like not knowing and questions of, you know, what's going on. How do we stop this? The grandmother and Mirtha too, both bring up like this set of rules to follow to survive this rotten problem. And they go on to break like every rule,
Yes, they do.
you know?
Every single grandma breaks it while she's talking about the rules
Yes, you're right.
because she doesn't
You're
believe
right.
them or whatever. Yeah, no, they break every rule, every single rule. The thing about that is, I think that would have bothered me in the past. Like, how could these characters be this stupid? It's plainly laid out. But then something happened 4 years ago that made me realize, no, people will just, they make rash, stupid decisions,
I got what you're saying.
and
got
they don't follow rules. They just, you tell them to do something and they go,
They do the
that's the best thing for me, but I'm not going to,
right.
you know, and,
I gotcha.
and that's how people operate. I didn't realize
gotcha.
that before 4 years ago, but now I do.
I got you.
So.
Because especially, you know what, in the movie too, there's that scene where he's trying to get to the rotten underneath the stage, and Mirtha's there, and she's like, you know, get the stage open. Stop listening to the little girl, because
Right.
there's like a little girl like in his ear the whole time, like, grab the axe,
Grab the axe. Or, no, we'll kill you if you stay. You have to leave. And every single word that comes out of her mouth is a lie because she's totally possessed, and it's
Dude.
pretty obvious.
Hay un hacha en dirección. La dirección está el hacha de incendio.
No, es mentira,
Hay
Pedro.
un gabinete rojo.
Es mentira.
Yo la vi.
Hola.
This reminded me of that 90s John Carpenter movie, Village of the Damned.
I haven't seen that one.
Like, dude, there's
But-
like a bunch of little asshole kids, you know, that are just terrorizing. And that's what these kids seem like. I don't
Yeah.
know. But yeah, to that point, like, then he starts listening to the little girl because he's getting frustrated and then leaves Mirtha. It's like, you had one job. You know?
Who cares how long it takes to open this thing up? You got to
Right.
do it without leaving Mirtha alone because that's what Mirtha says.
Right.
But it's just, that's who he is. That's how he operates. He operates that way the entire movie. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
5 minutes before that, Mirtha was like, go get this thing. Don't run. He immediately starts jogging away. And she's like, she has this tone like, the fuck did I just say, dude?
Anda a traerme todas mis cosas y no corras. No te apures. Te dije que no corras.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
So.
I could tell it was gonna be one of those like endings where it's like there's hope, but
There's no hope
To
in
get-
this ending.
to get to the hope, you have to get through your own
Right.
idiocies. I don't know what the word is. But like,
He's fatally flawed, and he has to
yes.
he has to overcome his fatal flaw, which is that he makes bad, rash decisions, and he can't control his emotions. Yeah, and as a result, I'm pretty sure that entire damn town is fucked. Is the way I would put it. It's over.
Oh my goodness.
It's over forever for that town and all the people in it. And Pedro and not his name's still not Jimmy. Another thing I don't like about the translation. I don't know what his name actually is, but you never hear Jimmy come out of anybody's mouth. But
Second
they're
brother?
both going to die though. It's
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
It's a no hope situation. I got it. I think it's frustrating, you know, when you're watching it because you're like, come on. But like to your point, you know, we're human beings and that's not how we act.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's different from a lot of like stupid horror movie decisions, I think. Like, he's not just like running up the stairs when there's a back door in front of him. You know what I'm saying? He's making decisions that in the moment in your own brain might feel like they could be okay, good ideas. But I mean, obviously to the audience, they're not, because you know the rules. And so does he, but he's, you know, not thinking right. You can't control his own emotions. So
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to give our ratings on this movie and we can kind of talk about where we ended up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
All right.
You go first.
So for our 3-tier rating system, we have Killer, which is awesome, and I got a thumbs up. We have Survivor, which is like the mid-tier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's something that we would recommend, but it wasn't like the greatest movie we've ever seen, but definitely like a popcorn flick, you know, one of those that is just a good watch. And A Victim, which we were the victims in watching that. Like, we would not recommend it. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a fatally flawed movie.
Right. Just like Pedro is a fatally flawed character.
100%.
A Victim is Pedro.
Yep, that's right. Now, in this movie, for me, I'm going to rate this a Survivor. I thought, again, I'm not a huge possession movie fan, but I think this one did it in a way that I've at least never seen. And I thought it was interesting. And it really kept me engaged in the whole movie, which I thought was good. Yes, like some of the gore was a little too much for me. Yes, sometimes I was a little confused. But like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, because like having open-ended, you know, thoughts on the movie, like, okay, that's cool. That creates like a dialogue like we had on our show tonight,
right?
You know?
And I'm also just willing to go on a ride sometimes, you know, like I don't understand this, but you got me heart pounding. So,
right. Some of it is very scary too. Like you said, like there are those terrifying, like, oh shit moments, you know, and, you know, and like we talked about too, the no hope, it's just a terrifying concept for it, you know? So I would say this is a Survivor for me. Like, I don't know how much rewatchability it has, because it's tough to sit through.
It's really hard to sit through. It's not a fun movie. I personally don't require horror movies to be fun to enjoy them, but if you do, just skip this one. It's not fun. It's not fun at all.
Right. What do you think? What's your rating?
Oh, I'm giving it no surprise from what I said before. I'm giving it a Killer. This is up there with all of my favorite of the modern horror movies. You know, like Hereditary and Annihilation, and I thought this movie was incredible. Which is crazy, because when I don't really like bleak endings most of the time, I like the good guys to win. And this is the bleakest ending that there is without Pedro actually dying on screen. And I tend not to like extreme levels of gore, which this movie has in spades, and with some of the hardest to stomach victims at that. I will say that I am a little bit worried that there will be some lesser directors who take this movie as permission to do that themselves. But you know, that can't be helped. You're going to end up with bad movies that are also upsetting because children are getting brutalized. That's just that's a bad combination. But you know, that's not the fault of this movie by any means. I loved this movie a lot. It keeps your heart pounding the entire time. It is paced so well. You start, you got about 15 minutes at the beginning to set up what's going to happen. And then once things start, as soon as that goat dies, this movie doesn't stop.
Right.
ever.
That's like the starting shot, no pun intended.
Right, right. We're running a marathon, and the shot at the goat's head is the starting gun, and you're just going for the rest of the movie. There's like a tiny, like maybe a 10-minute section in the middle where it gets a little bogged down in exposition, confusing exposition, but whatever.
Right.
Yeah, no, I love this movie. I would highly recommend it to anybody who thinks they can stomach it. I wouldn't have recommended it to myself had I known some of this stuff, but I'm glad that I just sort of soldiered through some of that stuff because I felt like I got a lot out of this movie.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. I think we both, or at least on the same wavelength with like, you know, definitely recommend watching it if you haven't, right? For anyone who's interested in seeing it.
I thought it was good enough that I would recommend just subscribing to Shudder to see it, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah. Especially if you got a free trial.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think in the future, you know, we'll definitely cover some more Shudder exclusives like this, you know, because I think they are kind of have the potential, at least for being diamonds in the rough a little bit that, you know, a bigger audience hasn't really seen.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I agree.
All right.
Alrighty.
Awesome. Well, before we end the show, we're going to go over our content consumed and let you know what we've been watching, reading, listening to, gaming. I'm going to go first. I don't have a whole lot this time around. I just watched
did a podcast where you did some content consumed too.
Right, yeah. So I'm kind of double dipping, but I'm going to go with some different things, you know, for my content consumed. I've been listening to a really great podcast who we're actually friends with on Instagram, and they're called We Thought This Was Good. And what they do is they're like guys our age, and they look back at, you know, movies from their childhood, like those nostalgic movies. Like I just listened to their one on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990, the Henson one. Right. And, you know, I thought it was really good, like listening to them talk about this movie that I haven't seen, admittedly, in a long time. Right. I was like, man, I got to see this movie now. Right. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
It was pretty good, and they have like a whole bunch of other episodes, so I definitely recommend checking them out. As far as watching, I haven't watched anything too different lately. We watched, which I mentioned on the Mouths of Madness podcast on the My Bloody Valentine episode, was Riff Tracks doing Birdemic, which
fucking masterpiece.
It was one of the most mind-boggling movies ever.
I want to watch that without the riff tracks. I love terrible movies. Oh yeah.
Do you think you could sit through that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'd be giggling the whole way through.
Nathan, I got another recommendation for you. Manos Hands of Fate.
You gave me that recommendation. I definitely got to see that one. I hadn't heard of it until you told me about it. So, but yeah, I love just bad, trashy movies.
Yeah.
Movies. It's got to be a certain level of bad, though. It can't just be like normal bad. I need it to be like down in the basement bad.
Yes.
For me to enjoy it. But
like no level of competency, like at all.
Correct. Yes. Like literally every decision, you know, the director was Pedro, except he was making a movie instead of instead of trying to get away from possession.
Dang. All right. Well, what do you have for content consumed?
So the only thing I really have for content consumed this time around, I've been spending a lot of time on my computer working on stuff instead of watching stuff, but it's actually sort of in line with the Birdemic theme.
Nice.
I found out a couple of friends of mine had not seen 2003's The Room, directed, written and starring Tommy Wiseau. So I was like, oh, you need to have this experience. I was like, you haven't seen that? So that's the main thing I think I've seen, really, is The Room. And the funny thing is, the next day, one of my friends, these two friends are married to each other, and she texts me and says, Nathan, my husband won't stop talking to me like Tommy Wiseau. And I was like, oh yeah? Has he told you you're tearing him apart yet? And she's like, 4 times.
You gotta tear me apart, Lisa!
He says we've all betrayed him. I'm like, oh yeah, is he fed up with this world? Oh yeah, he's fed up with this world. And then
That's
week
awesome.
later, she's texting me, he's still talking to me like Tommy Wiseau. I'm like, that's amazing. I've converted somebody.
You started like The Rotten just with Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking over.
Yeah. Hey
Oh,
man,
my
once you get a taste of Tommy Wiseau, man, you can't stop.
No.
And if you're good at doing an impression of him, I'm not. But if you are, you're just never gonna stop doing an impression of him. So yeah, that's
Thank
the
God
thing I
I'm
watch.
terrible at impressions. Oh man,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, this was a great episode and our first review episode. We'll have some more review episodes coming up on Straight Jacket Talk.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, stay tuned for a new one soon. All right, and back to the padded room with you. We'll see you soon.